Do you ever notice when you're doing some research, perhaps there's a particular piece of gear that you're interested in, and aside from watching YouTube reviews, you're on maybe Facebook or somewhere, you put out a post and say, what do you think about this? You're always going to get those guys that say,
oh, I own this thing, absolutely love it, best thing ever.
And especially with amp modelers, I've seen many posts of people saying,
yeah, I bought this thing and it's just so awesome, I sold all my pedals and all my amplifiers.
Well, it's funny because I think some guitar players feel this need to have this extra layer of validation, like they have to justify that $2,000-$3,000 purchase maybe to their wives. I don't know. But for me, most of my gear, I don't have emotional attachments to them, with the exception of perhaps some guitars, sure. But most of the stuff you see here, these are just tools to get the job done. Now, I was in the market for a tool, and I wanted to get a pro-level modeler, and I ended up with a Fractal FM9. So it's been about a couple months now, so I want to talk about my learning curve and my experiences using the FM9 for the first 60 days, in the hopes it'll create a little perspective for you. Maybe you're out shopping for your own amp modeler. This is just one guy's perspective. Why don't you join me? Hey there, I'm Dan, the self-proclaimed Lonely Rocker. Thank you so much for joining me today. So what is the first 60 days like when you own your first Fractal product? What does that actually look like? Well, as luck would have it, I documented the research through to the purchase up to the first 5 days of owning the Fractal FM9, and I want to share that with you.
The Helix is still the best modeler going, without a doubt.
Well, maybe I should stick with tried and true.
The Helix is falling behind. Line 6 needs to update it already.
What if I buy one and then they suddenly release a new modeler?
Quad Cortex, game changer.
Well, all the cool YouTubers are using it, so maybe I should get
When
one.
is Neural DSP going to deliver on their promises? It's been 2 years.
Really? They're not keeping up with their updates?
I just dumped all of my gear for the Fender Tone Master Pro.
That thing is so powerful, it's going to destroy the competition.
You know what? You can't really lose with a big brand like Fender.
The Tone Master Pro doesn't have a lot of amps, and it's been months with barely any updates.
What if they're not actually committed to it?
If you are truly serious about your studio, then you need to acquire a Fractal.
Hands down.
Well, I do have a studio, and perhaps that's the way to go.
The Fractals are so confusing, so not user-friendly.
No, I really don't like wasting time.
Head rush. It's a toy. Don't bother.
Hello, Fractal. I'm considering acquiring an FM9 and was wondering if you have any incentives for YouTubers you've likely never heard about, but if they promise to make a lot of videos. Oh, you'll give me a $100 discount? Oh, it's on sale for everybody. So you're offering me an additional $100 discount? You're not. Well, can you at least throw in a humbuster cable?
No.
Free shipping?
No.
Can I get a cookie?
No.
All right, take my money. Woohoo! I can't believe how fast this thing showed up. I'm diving right into this thing. What do you mean we have to go out right now? I just got my thing. All right, USB to computer, check. Outputs to speaker monitors, check. Power's on. Guitar input here. All right, let's check out some presets. Yeah, these presets sound pretty good. Maybe I'll try and make my own. Where did the sound go? I don't understand. So, kind of here, and then there. Then. Okay, that was pretty easy. Okay, so now I want to figure out how to loop in a real amp. Nope, not working.
Or guitar track.
Okay, that's interesting, but I'm not interested in USB reamping the FM9. I want to reamp a real amp through the FM9. This is not an amplifier. Still not working.
I think you might be looking at this the wrong way. You are reamping to the FM9. You happen to be using a preset in your FM9 that has an amp in the effects loop, but that makes no difference to the procedure you use for reamping.
All right, it's finally working, but I don't understand what I did differently today that I didn't do yesterday. But whatever, I'm just going to write this down. Yeah, I'm really liking this thing. But so many people say it's just so confusing. But honestly, it's working really great for me. You can suspend disbelief just a little bit that that actually happened. Maybe I did wear the same clothes for 7 days, but who's counting? Maybe I should have planned that a little bit better. But anyways, that was actually kind of accurate. Cheesy reenactment aside, I did actually try to get a discount from Fractal, and they did make me feel like they were offering me a $100 discount when in fact they said it was actually on sale for everyone. So there was no discount to be had. And it's not like I feel like I deserve one, but it certainly doesn't hurt to ask. But I do want to mention that their support has been amazing. And no, I didn't bother them on how to use the device. I had some very specific technical questions and they were very, very quick to answer. So good on Fractal, standing behind their products like that and offering exceptional support. That's always a good thing when you get behind a certain product. And actually the day it arrived, I was actually going to a concert and Big Rec, I think one of the most ferocious guitar players on the planet, Ian Thornley, who's a tone monster. Before they went on stage, I wanted to see what pedals he was using and amps and stuff. And what did I see? A Fractal FM9. So the day I received mine, no better validation than having one of your guitar heroes playing the same piece of gear. So that was pretty awesome as well. And I do want to give mention to two people that I don't actually know, Leon Todd and Cooper Carter. Their YouTube channels are awesome with awesome Fractal information and other things as well. In the case of Leon Todd, like I said, I don't know them personally, but I found their channels extremely helpful in helping me getting over that initial hump. And actually a third person who I don't know, Glenn O on the Fractal Audio forums. He, again, I don't know who he is, and apologies for that funny voice I put in the video, but actually his posts are exceptionally helpful, and he actually jumped into one of my threads to help me out. So whoever he is, I want to thank him because it's been extremely helpful. So anyways, like I said, that was pretty accurate. So I want to take you through sort of my thoughts. Now that I've actually had it for 60 days, I want to touch on some very specific things. Number one, do I feel after the first 2 months that I got value for the money? Very important. Number two, the tones. I've heard Fractal products on YouTube, but I've never used one until I got this. The third thing is something that's a big one is a lot of people who are critical of Fractal just say that it's very confusing. I think that's an important one if you are in the market for a modeler. Now that I've had it here for 60 days, is it actually that confusing? We're going to touch on that. And really the big reason that I wanted to get a modeler in the first place, other than hopefully getting some great sounding amp models, I am an amp guy and I'm mainly a recording guy. So I wanted something that would be a good recording hub for the studio. Did it meet my expectations? Let's find out. So I want to touch on first on value for money. Do I feel I got good value? Now, something like this in my dollars shipped was about $2,300. In US dollars, I think we're talking about $1,600 plus shipping and things like that. So you're looking at close to either side of $2,000. It's not a cheap purchase, but depending on what you're in the market for me, there was actually a couple of things that I needed. I was looking to get an amp modeler because I didn't have a pro level modeler here. I do have a Helix here now, but that's a topic for another video. So I was looking to acquire a pro level modeler. I was also considering about upgrading my audio interface. I also wanted to improve the I/O capability of my studio. So if I wanted to insert something, maybe a pedal or something like that, I wanted an easier way to do that. And also reamping is something I was already doing, but I wanted to improve my reamping situation. So those are all things that you can do with the Fractal FM9. On top of that, you've got a ton of amazing effects. Now, once you learn how to use this thing, you can actually route a signal from your DAW through the FM9 and back in, so which means you can use all of these effects for other tracks, not just guitar. You can process your vocals through it, your bass guitar. Well, actually, there's some good bass amps on here as well, but anything that you have in your project, you can actually loop it out, run it through this device and back in, so suddenly it becomes outboard gear. It's just a really good multi-effects device. So if you factor in the cost of all of those things individually, you're probably going to spend a lot more than $2,000. So really value for this purchase was exceptionally high because I ended up acquiring a number of things that I could use independently of each other. It's not always just for my guitar or bass. I'm actually processing all sorts of things with it, and it's just a fun way to work. It's a different workflow. Obviously, the convenience of plugins aside, but sometimes you want to do something differently. You know, when you're in studios and you only have 2 compressors and you have 16 tracks, what do? They print the effect into a track and then they move on. So it's a different workflow, but the effects are exceptional, and it's definitely a value add for my studio. And not to mention reamping, you're probably going to spend $200-300 on bare bones equipment to be able to reamp a real tube amp, and that's something that I could do through the FM9 as well. So value for money was exceptional. So talking about tones, I don't want to overstate this because this is not a tone demo. We're definitely going to get into more specific tones and things like that in future videos. But understanding that this was the first time that I ever got to try a Fractal product. I've been watching videos for years and I've seen people using Fractal, and it was just something I heard on YouTube. Never actually got to try it because one of the challenges with Fractal, there's only very specific places you can buy it. It's sort of direct order from Fractal or one of their distributors, depending on what country you're in. So I've never actually had the pleasure of trying one. So when you hear it for the first time, it's pretty amazing. I was pretty blown away at how good the device sounded, and not just the amp models themselves, but I've already mentioned the effects. It's just the whole experience of hearing what the Fractal has to offer. Everything is just high level, especially when you're listening to things in stereo. It's just exceptional. And the amp models are really, really great. And there's just so many of them. I think there's like 300 amps or something in the FM9. So at first I was actually a little bit overwhelmed. I remember sitting here one day and I'm sort of looking around me. I've got all my gear around me, my pedals, and for a minute it was like, oh, I wonder if I'm ever going to use my pedals again. And I had to actually stop myself. It scared me because it's almost too easy to get great tones. So if you're feeling lazy one day, in my case, I'm making videos. If I want to be more creative in writing a song, I don't have to think about tones. I can just pick a preset and I know it's going to sound amazing. That also can make you a bit lazy. So that's something that I have to fight. And one of the reasons why I want to be able to reamp my own amps is it keeps me sort of in the game of shaping my own tones and just utilizing a great piece of gear. But the tones are amazing. There's just such a wide variety of amplifiers, and then combine all the different effects. There's just so much here that you've got tone for years. And I know it's going to come in handy for different demos here on the channel. And just quick and dirty when you're writing things, you know, you're just going to get inspired. That feeling is real. I've played it back and forth with my real amps, and it's just a very natural feeling sensation when you're playing through the FM9. So that's all I want to say about tones today, but it definitely met and exceeded my expectations after listening to Fractal products on YouTube, and finally having one here certainly did not disappoint. All right, so I want to touch on the sentiment that Fractal products are confusing. Now, I'm going to debunk that right away because I think it's unfair. Now, different products function differently. They offer things for different types of users. Now, Fractal products are geared more to a professional community. Now, when you're a professional, you want to have access to more and more features. You know, not to say something like a Helix is not professional, because you can deep dive on the Helix as well. It just got a very different philosophy. So this is kind of how I got through that. Now, day one, I was frustrated as hell. It was because I didn't know the device. I was trying to jump in. I want to run my amp through it. I wanted to do everything on the first day. And that was the wrong way to approach it, because you kind of got to get through that initial stage of just understanding where everything is. And here's an example of the biggest difference between, let's say, a Helix and the Fractal. And this is not a comparison video, but for some of you that may have used a Helix. Now, when you plug your guitar into a Helix and you go into a fresh preset, you're still going to get a signal because there's sort of that basic signal chain in place, and then you start adding to it. With Fractal, every new preset is a blank canvas. That means you have to add an input, you have to add an output, you have to patch it just to get that basic signal. I didn't understand that at first. Actually, one of my friends told me that, but I didn't apply it until I applied it and realized that you just wouldn't get a sound. You think everything's plugged in and like, what am I doing wrong? It actually frustrated me. So the first couple of days were really frustrating, and even understanding how to loop signals through it is because I didn't know. Now, here's the thing. I gave myself a couple of days just to really get inside the mind of this machine, right? I think if you invest that time, it's well worth it because then it's sort of smooth sailing from there. Now, the other thing is there's a deep treasure trove of tweakability in the FM9. Now, if you look at it in layers, at the top layer, if you're, let's say, adjusting an amplifier, you have all the basic settings that you're used to adjusting on an amp or in an amp modeler where you can adjust the tone controls, the gain level, things like that. If there's a bright switch on that amp, it's very easy to access. But then if you start going deeper into the layers, you can get deeper down and down into that reservoir of all sorts of tweakability, like, tweaking the bias of the tubes and things like that. And I look at that as sort of as the top 2%. You have that sound in your head and you're just not getting it with an EQ. You have a place to go. And professionals often like to go there. But you don't have to. If you just stay at the preset level, you've got lots to do with the Fractal FM9 and it's not confusing. It's sort of the deeper and deeper you go into it, there's just so much there. And those features are there because professionals want them to be there, but you don't have to use them. So I think to say that the Fractal comes up short compared to other modelers because it's confusing is actually a very unfair statement. It just offers a lot more. Now think of it like a computer. Now some of you are just, log in, check an email, watch a YouTube video, turn it off, and that's all you do on a computer. Other people sort of get deeper into the OS, tweaking the different features of the operating system and customizing it for their use. There's many people that have a computer that never even go into the settings, right? That's kind of what this is. All these modelers, it's a computer. There's really nothing happening here hardware-wise that makes the tone sound better. It's all done in basically a built-in computer. It has an operating system, it has a GUI, and then it's got some ins and outs on it so you can route signal. But all of this could exist inside of a computer. There's really no difference. So really just learning how to use this, understanding that this is a computer. Some modelers are just not giving you access to those additional features. Some modelers haven't developed those features, right? So Fractal has, and that's the big difference. And calling it confusing truly is unfair. You just got to spend a little bit of time with it. And I think once you get over that hump, for me, it took a couple of days. It might be quicker for you. It might take a couple more days. But once you get over that, you start to get into the mindset of the device. And honestly, it's not that complicated. So really the biggest thing for me to assess after 60 days, did I get that recording hub that I wanted? It goes without saying, it's an amp modeler. We talked about the tones, but I wanted a device that was going to handle a lot of different jobs. I wanted a new audio interface. I wanted good I/O. I wanted to be able to reamp real amplifiers. Obviously, it's a device that's going to be a monitoring station for my studio because it's controlling all of the audio in my system. Did it really live up to its expectations? So I've been throwing a lot of praise on it. But there are some things that I think could be better. Now, the audio interface part itself is actually really good. Now, I don't know if it was actually a thing, but when I first plugged it in, something in my system sounded better. Again, maybe it was some kind of placebo. I don't know. But it actually sounded a little bit better to me. It is a high-end device. I assume it has some good components in there. So maybe it did improve the overall sound on my system over what I had before. That is possible. So that definitely is a plus. I love the fact that what I call always on, when you hook it up like an audio interface and hook up your studio monitors to this, when you plug in your guitar, you have tones immediately. I don't have to run it through a DAW, set up some plugins and set up the I/O. It's always on. So if the computer is off and I still have power to my speakers, I can actually plug in and I can play. I don't have to spark everything up and get it all set up. So that's really great. And plus when you're recording, you're monitoring through this device. So you have absolutely no latency. A lot of people talk about feel. What does it feel like? And it feels great because there's absolutely no latency. And then when it records, it can record that preset that you're playing through, but it can also record a DI at the same time. So if you change your mind, you can actually route that DI back through the Fractal, pick a different preset, and record it back into your DAW. And of course, re-amping, which is something I wanted to do with my amplifiers. Once I got that all set up, it actually works wonderfully well. It was a little confusing at first because I didn't understand it, but it actually didn't take much to figure it out. And I've all got it wired now and actually made some notes. So when I want to configure it for any one of my amplifiers, it's actually super simple. I have a preset saved and I have a workflow to do that. And I can loop in any one of my amps and I could put that in a signal chain with the effects on board, the FM9, and it sounds really, really great. And that's actually a great way to work because you can process your guitars with all the effects that you want. You can hear it in real time while you're in your mix, and then you can print it after the fact, and it really takes away some of the resources that your DAW has to process if you're actually processing your full guitars through the FM9. I was always one to record the raw amp tone. I'm always going DI. I go through the reactive load mostly, and then I'll add my cab IRs and my effects in my mix, but I can do it all in real time through the FM9 now, and it saves a lot of resources, and I can print that final sound, and if I want to go back and make a tweak, I can do it through here and then just print it again. So, I mean, the extra couple of minutes it takes to record it, I think you're saving time. It's really efficient to do it in real time and be able to get your hands on the device. So that's awesome. Now, the interface itself sounds good to me, but there's a couple of things about it. Number one, you're connecting via USB 2.0. And in 2024, okay, 2023, when I bought this device, I don't know why we're still in USB 2.0. Now, in terms of tracking, it's not really a big deal. Latency is not an issue. But when you get into reamping, that's where latency potentially could be introduced. I've got an Apple Mac Studio. It's got Thunderbolt 4 on it, and I don't really have a lot of USB 2.0 connections there. I have to have a hub there to accommodate some devices that insist on staying on USB 2.0. So it's kind of a shame that it doesn't have a faster connection. That certainly would be a lot better in a reamping situation, and it's something perhaps they'll improve in the future. The other thing is that it doesn't have a microphone input. That's actually something the Helix has over the Fractal, is there's no microphone input. So now I don't sing, I record bass and guitar mostly, but I do voice work, like voiceovers and things like that. So I still need to run my microphone through a different device, especially because I need phantom power. The FM9 does not have that. So you could still do it, but you would need an external preamp with phantom power, and then you would run that into an input on the FM9. So that's something that's lacking in terms of looking at this as a self-sufficient audio interface, because it's missing a couple of features that way. So overall, it sounds great, and the integration is wonderful, and the recording experience is great, but you're missing a couple important things to have in a studio, so you'll definitely need to have another either audio interface or another way to get some of your signals routed through it. Well, there's my little experience, my first 60 days with the Fractal FM9. I hope you found that mildly entertaining and interesting. If you have any questions at all, would love to hear from you. That's what the comment section is for. I plan to bring you a lot more content about the FM9 as I get deeper and deeper into it, as I find the best applications for it, little tips and tricks and things like that. I'm getting a lot of use from it or out of it here in my studio, and I'm definitely going to share my experiences with you. So don't hesitate to throw some ideas or suggestions or questions into the comment section. But also, if you want to learn a little bit more about the journey and how I got here with the Fractal FM9, I made a video about why I bought it in the first place. I'll put that right here. You can check that out. But if you did enjoy this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell. And remember, you don't need a band to rock and roll. I'll catch you in the next one.